Hello and welcome. Today we're going to de-robot this 2009 Gibson Darkfire. This was one of the Gibson attempts to modernize and be innovative in an industry that frankly has been pretty static since the Telecaster and Gibson Les Paul were born. So I'm going to take the tuners off first. This is a pretty easy operation. I will give them credit on this part of the design that it's somewhat modular, and this part would be easy to service and replace. But also I understand that these parts are hard to come by, and this was a flop. The robot guitars, even the ones that were modernized afterwards, you see how that just came off very easily. It's got a circuit board there, and the tuners are locking tuners, so that's a pretty nice touch. But you see there the pin that you unscrew on the top. I was having some problems getting that. There's a clear plexiglass window to be able to marvel at the electronics, and there's the battery that is difficult to replace. I understand some folks have done some other makeshift batteries, buying some lithium-ion batteries from other sources and getting them to work with that particular plug. So there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff crammed in that space. So I went ahead and started removing the knobs, and you see too that is often the case. This is not just for robot guitars or the reflector knobs. Sometimes the reflector tone, volume, or whatever indicator comes off. I put some super glue on that later. I'm using this tool that I got from Stu Mac that you saw me using to get the, you'll see me using I got the tuners off with that. And this one was pretty tight. I was struggling with it. And the trick is to get under it, but I did get that finally. And then this thing just kind of popped off, which I guess I didn't know what to expect with that. And so that's just kind of a module that sits on top. And there's the actual LED indicator, which is quite ingenious considering how much they got into that little space. And you can also see there that potentiometer is hollowed out so the wire can reach the back, which is fairly ingenious. But when I bought this guitar off eBay, it was sold as partially working. I didn't even bother testing it. I've had a few robot guitars. I had one of these guitars in the past, and I really kind of missed the aesthetic of it. I love the look of the Darkfire. But you can see there's a lot of wires crammed in that space, and it's kind of a pain in the butt to... that thing came out easy because it went through that with a plug, and I identified which connector that was going to. But now I'm just kind of wondering, well, should I keep track of what's going where? And I really didn't do that because you could see where the pickups are coming just by tugging on the wire or whatever, and I ended up doing that later. But yeah, they have things crammed in there really tightly. So I was a little worried when I was pulling it out, and cautious to a degree to see if I could get it out of there without damaging anything. And it took some finagling, as you can see. But yeah, the Gibson Les Paul Darkfire was a limited edition, and it only came out with this. Now this is like the second iteration. The first robot was that blue silver burst one. I had one of those too because I love that finish, but alas, I did get rid of that one as well. So yeah, I'm just kind of trying to see what's going on here with the connections and things, and you just have to take them off. That's that's all there is to it to get this whole thing out of there. And I thought for a second I would use these potentiometers, but they're really long shaft potentiometers. So anyway, I'm just working on getting this thing disassembled and out of there, and then I will start worrying about what wires go to what different connections. In other words, there's a three-way switch, there's two pickups, there is a couple wires that go to the bridge which actually is a piezo bridge, which is quite nice. And I end up keeping that intact so I can maybe hook it up and use it later. But I didn't hook it up yet. I just left the wires, the connectors there. There's also at least one wire, maybe two, going to the tailpiece. And this is all part of the auto tuning and, allowing it to set the tunes to whatever tuning, alternate tuning or standard tuning that you want. So I finally got that out, and that was quite an ordeal, really. And now I am going to work on getting that tailpiece off and the three-way switch off. You can see that tool is pretty handy. I do like it. You have to be cautious with it because it will kind of strip out your three-way collar nut there. So here I'm just taking off the clear. It's also clear, that three-way control plate cover. Most of the video I sped up to like 3 times just for brevity. I like watching people work, but if there's not much going on, it's kind of... Anyway, I just decided to speed most of it up, but not this part for whatever reason. I really don't know. But just getting that out is a kind of a hassle sometimes. I could have easily flipped it over. And there you see I'm going to pull this out, and you can see the connector in the control cavity moving, so you can tell which one that is. Now that three-way switch also has a potentiometer built into it to change the volume, adjust the volume of the piezo acoustic bridge, which is pretty neat. And I ended up deciding to reuse that too for that very purpose. If I do get the piezo working, I think I'd like to use that potentiometer built into the three-way switch. But I noticed that when I played it was a little scratchy, the three-way itself. So I'm not sure. We'll see how it goes. And right now I was thinking that I was going to be replacing that three-way switch with just a standard Switchcraft or other three-way switch. So I decided to feed some wire through the cavity so I could just pull it back through the new switch or whatever once I got done. So I'm just doing this so I can not have to wrestle with the chamber and the cutaway for that wire that goes all the way through the pickup routes. And that way I didn't really have to take the pickups out either, which was, a nice whatever. So I get that, and I'm feeding that wire through there. That way I can fish it back through later. Trying to be proactive here, folks. Excuse me. So that's done. And now I am going to show you that potentiometer at the top actually does function. That's what the white indicator is for. You can tell where it's on. You're basically blending the piezo in with the humbuckers. So you could turn the humbuckers all the way down and turn the piezo up if you just wanted that acoustic sound. And now I'm figuring out this bridge, which those nuts in there are basically captivated and loose, which is really annoying, but they did their job and it stays in there. So I'm getting the associated wires with those. Looks like there's 2 pair with those also. Yeah, and that comes out, and you can see there's a circuit board on the back of the tailpiece. Just giving it a little wipe down and examining this, and there's the other pair that's associated with the piezo. So I have yet to figure out if I can just hook those up to a little preamp or something to see if I can make them work. I was talking to a gentleman on the internet that I was corresponding with that actually makes a circuit board for that. I might end up having to use that. He said everything coming out of there is junk, but I just need to verify that for myself. So here I have it on the workbench, and I'm going to start the tedious process of hooking up some standard potentiometers. Well, somewhat standard, I'll say. And there's the wire for the three-way that I decided to bring back through, because I'm going to reuse it anyway. And you can see there are many wires associated with that three-way. Only 3 of them are actually associated with or tied to the three-way switch. The other ones are for the potentiometer. And you can see I used a mini potentiometer for the bridge volume there. I had to dig up some scraps, basically, of potentiometers to get 4 of them, and the mini was kind of the outlier there. I mean, they all end up working pretty good, but as you know how this kind of crap goes, the day after I finished this, soldering all this together, I actually found all of my long shaft CTS or Gibson potentiometers that I already had, and I could not find when I was looking for them. That's God's funny way of laughing at you. Oh, you were looking for these yesterday? Here they are. Anyway, I'm just getting these wires sorted out, and so I can get them tinned. And I'm going to, pretty soon here, I guess I'm going to undo the pickups and check to see which one is actually going to which, and I'll end up marking that with a piece of black tape. But here I'm just tinning the wires to the three-way switch. It's always a good idea to pre-tin your wires with a little bit of solder so they don't fray, and so they've also had some solder wicking into them, and it's easier to manipulate them if to get them in a J hook, which is what I do. So there's more than just a solder connection. There's actually kind of a physical connection with the solder joints. So now I need to sort out, I'm trying to sort out the Neutrik jack, which ones are going to the jack and which ones are going to the turn the battery on. And of course I had a 50-50 chance to figure out which was which, and I'm actually checking with the multimeter to see what registers, and that was not the right one. So my 50-50 chance did not pay off. I ended up just stashing that. Maybe I clipped it at the end. I can't remember. I should though, because it was actually giving some antenna like 60 cycle home under those really bright fluorescents anyway. So I found the correct pair of wires for the output jack, and I'll get those twisted off and tinned as well to make sure that they will fall into place with good solder connections once I get them ready for the next stage. So now I'm trying to figure out, okay, which one of these wire cables is for each pickup. And I do get those stripped off and tinned as well, just to make sure, again, you get good solder connections and get good solder wicking into those wires. Sorry about my camera, it's a little off here at times. I'm still learning how to best set up my camera in the shop, and I'm outside here, and it's quite cold for this region this time of year. I had a heater out there, but it was still pretty cold out there, 30, 25, 30 degrees or so. So I'm just stripping back the wires for the other pickup. And I noticed too that Gibson, they don't really uniformly follow a 4-wire conductor or 3-wire conductor, even color coding. You got to kind of sort it out. And even though Google gave me a million ads when I was looking for this, most diagrams have different color codes for these pickups. I do not think that these are special for the Darkfire, because I believe these are just standard pickups. If I'm not mistaken, it's a Burst Bucker 3 plus maybe in the bridge, and a P100 in the neck position there. So this is what I'm doing. I'm taking out the P90, P100 rather, I just said, excuse me, to just tug on the wire to make sure that, you can see that's just plastic. And figure out which one is the bridge and which one is the neck. And it looks like I got that sorted out. But getting that cover back into the cavity was a bit of a pain in the ass. One edge is up, one's down. I wasn't getting it very easily. But since it's 3 times the speed on the video, it doesn't seem like such a struggle. So I get that back secured. I've got that wire identified. And I end up putting a piece of red tape around it so I know which one's the bridge. So when I'm doing my wiring for my potentiometers, it makes sense and works. That's critical for these things, folks. And I was pretty lucky. I got it on the first try and everything worked the way it was supposed to. My advice for anybody doing this, and it's something that I need to take and follow as well, is just be patient. Make sure, just take your one solder connection at a time, take one wire at a time. Double check everything. You see I'm using a little cardboard cutout, which I basically traced from the actual potholes, potentiometer holes on the front of the guitar. So I knew that they would line up with enough slack and wiring that they'll just drop in there when it's the correct time. And here you can see I'm doing J hooks and getting things soldered onto the potentiometer there. Now, when you're when you're soldering in general, you want to heat up the back of the component or the thing that you're soldering to. And then you put the wire on, and then you put the solder on the wire, if that makes sense. You want to come behind it. You don't want to put solder on your iron per se. You do want to put a little on there. A little tiny glob of pre-solder to get things going, but heat up the back of the leg of the potentiometer, and then put the solder on the wire on the other side, and that helps it get uniform heating and everything like that. You can see I got my J hook there, and that's just to make sure. Yeah, some of these were a struggle to get in those potentiometer legs. They're quite small, and my eyes are not what they used to be, even though I'm actually wearing readers here. But yeah, and there's the multimeter that my friend Freeman actually gave me for free. I really appreciated that. It looks like a fluke. It's a fluke knockout, but it has a really good display, and it's working pretty well. Anyway, I'm getting these wires stripped back. There's some shielding on these wires, so they're pretty good. It's not like the braided wire shielding, which is probably 1,000,000 times better, but reusing everything I can here. And there's nothing wrong with these pickups. I love these pickups. I think they sound great. And I actually ended up wiring them purposely out of phase. So during the playing demo, you will hear that they have significant volume reduction in the middle position with both pickups on, and it sounds rather quacky and thin, and that's the out of phase sound. But what I had learned is if you just take the volume down on either the bridge or the neck pickup, it enhances the volume of the other and it evens out the volume. So you can get some really, really diverse and interesting and different and unique sounds using the out of phase and just changing either the bridge volume down a little bit until it comes up, and then it has a little more bassy neck pickup sound, or you take the neck pickup volume down and it enhances and exaggerates the bridge pickup characteristics and sound. You can really, really, really dial in some nice tones and different treble and bass balance just by doing that. And that kind of gives you a third option that, just 2 pickups combined don't really give you. I rarely go to the middle position unless I have a guitar that has the out of phase feature in it. So here I am just plodding through this, trying to get everything hooked up right and struggling with the wires to make sure that they're routed as best they can be. You see I had the ground wires on the potentiometers already wired, as well as the capacitors on the tone. Excuse me. On the tone potentiometers there. And you also want to be careful. I know I've mentioned this in the past, but when you are hooking up your ground wires to the back of a potentiometer, you need to get it hot enough that it'll melt the solder, because the back of that potentiometer really acts as a heat sink. So it takes quite a bit of heat to get it warmed up enough to melt the solder. But if you leave that soldering iron on there too long, it will damage or ruin completely the potentiometer. So you want to work quick. You want to get a good solder joint, and you want to have a pretty hot soldering iron. You know, I've got that kind of older and not the greatest Weller cranked up here to full, just to make sure that I can get the solder melted properly. So all the electronics are in, and everything was tested, and I just did a quick bang test on the pickups with a screwdriver to make sure they were making noise. And now I'm using the Novus number 2 automotive polish to just kind of get some of the initial scratches and kind of just buff it out a little bit here. It probably honestly needs another treatment of the Novus number 2. There's a lot of different, like Meguiar's, people use that too. You can use a lot of different polishes, but I find the Novus, I like it the best. I haven't used a lot of others. I just really like the finished product. You can just basically brush it on, and you don't need to use a ton of polishing force. And you can see I'm just using an old cut-off t-shirt here. I like to use old t-shirts, things that are 100% cotton, to just make sure everything runs smooth and doesn't gank up anything. Yeah, I got a little globule of finish in the P90 or P100 cavity there. I ended up struggling to get those remnants out later. But yeah, just getting this thing polished up and prepared. The fretboard was pretty dirty. You can kind of see that. So I took some naphtha and cleaned those up pretty good. I didn't want to take sandpaper to them or steel wool or anything really. The frets probably could have used some polishing too, but they weren't too bad, so I didn't bother doing that here. Maybe on the next string change. I was pretty anxious at this point to get this thing strung up and determine if it worked well or at all, really. So just being a little methodical and using the lighter fluid. You do want to use naphtha. They have lighter fluids now. And I'm not really sure about this Zippo, frankly. But naphtha is the safest. It won't remove your nitrocellulose finish. And I'm not doing any of that now. I'm just rubbing down this fretboard and trying to get some of the previous owner's skin cells and dirt and beer or whatever else that might be on their hands off of here, and cleaned up a little bit. And you can see there's still some lines on there, so I didn't get it like down to the wood or anything. Just a quick cleanup. It's a nice thing to do. It's a nice thing to do between string changes, and just to kind of clean it up. And you should probably polish your frets too, depending on how oxidized they are or how rough they are. They will just kind of oxidize if left in a case with strings on it for a long time. So just take care of your guitars, maintenance things that make it easier to play and more enjoyable to pull out of the case and win the battle for who's going to get played today, kind of thing. And now I'm going to use the F1 oil, which is purposely made for the fretboards. Not maple. You don't really want to use this on maple, but ebony, rosewood, Indian laurel, whatever. Probably even the fake fretboards that Paul Ferro, Rich Light, that's what it is. It's the Rich Light boards. And I just, put a dot or so on each one and gently work it into the fretboard. And it really nourishes and replenishes the moisture and, any dryness that might have occurred from the naphtha cleaning treatment or even your weather conditions, low humidity during the winter. Things dry out, so you want to keep it humidified, and this oil really does that for the fretboard. And it also darkens it up to make it more pleasing visually. You can see the vast contrast between the frets that are oiled and the ones that haven't yet been spread out yet. It's just amazing. It almost goes black once the oil gets on there. And I like to leave it for 20 minutes, hour, whatever, to really let it penetrate the wood and soak in to it before I wipe it off. I do give it a good wipe down afterwards, because you don't want oil that's maybe a little thick on some frets, or the fretboard between the frets, of course. You just wipe them off, wipe it down before I put the strings on. Just working that oil in, working it in. It's soaking it up like a sponge pretty much. I like those carbon fiber inlays. I really do. And that's done. And so now I am going to get the bridge put back together and reassembling the guitar. Now, a lot of folks in forums have a lot of things to say about these Darkfires and these robot guitars. Most of them haven't ever played one, let's be honest. When the robot tuners are functioning properly, they work pretty good, and it's nice to have those different tuning. Here I was debating which spare tuners to use. I had some spare tuners. I had some Gibson Clouson types on the left there now, and then some older Schallers on the right. And I opted to go with the black keys to kind of go with the Darkfire chrome and black. And I think they ended up working out really well. I think it looked better than just the silver Schallers, but they would have been perfectly fine too. But yeah, people's opinions on these are really through the roof. A couple guys will defend them and say, I still have mine, and all the robot stuff is working, and I'm perfectly happy with it. I don't know, maybe I got lucky. And everybody else is like, that guitar's a piece of junk, or you have to take all the crap out of it to make it a good guitar. Well, you have to take the crap out of it to make it like a standard Les Paul. The Darkfire tuning system and the electronics was very convoluted. It was really difficult to dive through the menu with that one knob. There was a partial pull and a partial push that you had to do. So it was really just kind of a pain in the ass for people to remember how to use it. And frankly, I can tune my own guitar. You know what I mean? So it's not something that appeals to me only because I'm not doing a lot of alternate tunings. That's the one use case I think that's really valuable for one of these. If you're not bringing a spare, or you don't want to bring a spare guitar in your alternate open G or open E or drop D tuning, whatever, you can use one of these. And when they're working, they work great. I've only had two that didn't work well. All the other ones I had, well, which is probably like 2 or 3. They all worked really well. So I'm not here to poo-poo or throw shade on the robot or the smart electronics that Gibson was attempting here. I just didn't want that. I don't really desire that, and I won't use it. So there you have it. I got it back put together again. I'm going to give you a playing demo here. I hope you enjoy it. Stick around for the whole thing in my closing comments, but I think it turned out pretty good. Let me know what you think in the comments. So here's the finished product. I hope you'll agree that it's a beautiful guitar, and once you get the guts out, it's very much like any other Les Paul, but with some really nice appointments. You can see how those tuners ended up looking. I think they look good, and they're actually working really well. You know, the back is a sweet worn, kind of almost like a Murphy aged. So yeah, you can just see how great the finish is on this. And you know, I don't think they'll be making another Darkfire or color like this. So I'm just going to enjoy this. I know a lot of people frown on this guitar, but you know, why is this any different than any other Les Paul? Other than the carbon fiber inlays that have, and you could take these pickup covers off, but I decided to leave them on. So there it is. I appreciate you following me on this journey. Thanks.